Hi.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Yuchen. This is my first time joining this group, and nice to meet you guys. And
Welcome.
I just randomly found some meetups on the meetups, and yeah, I'm more focused on backend, but I'm like a full stack, so yeah, I want to join this kind of meetups to learn more. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for checking this group out. Like, yeah, exactly. We have a lot of people now, especially people coming from outside LA, checking out the group. So as I mentioned to somebody else before, this is one of the better JavaScript groups out there. So definitely, if there are things you want to learn, you can reach out to me. I'm VJ. I'm the organizer, and then Rob is definitely also a great source of reference. He has his own meetup group in Arizona, so you should definitely check out his stuff too as well.
Hello, this is Kenny. So I attended a couple of sessions already, including the online session as well and the on-site session. So I really appreciate that you provide this platform and give us a chance to communicate everything that relates to JavaScript and all the web application development skills. So right now I'm working in a software company, and the production is still the desktop application, but we have this initiative to move the existing product to the SaaS program and moving all the existing products to the web application to use the cloud platform. So
Sure.
That's a project I'm working on right now. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. All right. Good to have you. Yeah.
Thank you, Vijay.
Of course. I'm going to go to the next person because I want to just be good with time. So just keeping it open for a couple more minutes. If you're shy, you can also introduce yourself in the chat. That's no problem.
I can introduce myself. Hey guys, my name's Richie. I'm a software engineer with a company called LC Vista. My experience is I took a Udemy class on Vue with Stephen Grider, and I really liked it. And right now, I'm about halfway through Udemy course in TypeScript, and I'm absolutely loving it. And so I saw this, and I thought it would be very interesting. I don't use TypeScript on the job. I wish, but we are hiring, and it's a cool company, and it's a remote position. So maybe I could post the job link in the chat, but that's not why I came. I came to check out Vue and TypeScript.
All right. Yeah. Good to hear from you. Good to meet you. Definitely, you can reach out afterwards and talk to me about like whatever it is that you might be recruiting for. All right. Anybody else?
Hey guys.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Sorry, dude. My name is Mason. I just finished Learning Fuse's full immersion boot camp, and I saw in the meetup group that they posted your meetups, and they've been posting your meetups, so I thought I'd join one today. Looking forward to what I can take from this, and looks sick. Excellent.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Mason.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
All right. Next.
I'm Habib. Hi, VJ. Nice seeing you again. I used to be mentored by VJ
Welcome
at a boot camp. Yeah. It's nice to see everyone. Nice to see people are still seeing each other during COVID. So I don't go to the office anymore. I used to work out in Orange County, but now I work remotely. I'm a test engineer for a software company. I do some front-end work, and certainly stuff I learned in React helped out, and I'm hoping to push it to the limit.
Good job. I'm so glad that you came. Good job. Awesome. Awesome. I feel great. All right. Anybody else?
Hey guys, I'm Dana. I'm a full stack engineer with Undebate. Right now, I'm working on a project with the city of Hartford, making their landing page for their next election, Hartford, Connecticut. Haven't come in a few meetups, so it's good to see you guys again. I am open for new opportunities as well. So, all right.
Excellent. And you know, if you do want to like talk to somebody about, you know, possible opportunities, feel free to use the chat. We also have a Slack and a Discord, so you can post there as well.
I'll put my LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn, I encourage that. If you didn't get a chance today to basically say hello, just drop your LinkedIn in the chat and network that way too. I think it's a really great resource for people to be able to sort of meet each other and, you know, connect. And just kind of like one more thing I'll add, just, you know, one of the reasons I made this group was to help, you know, people learn JavaScript, obviously, and programming. But the other reason was to help them kind of like build their network, because I feel like you can really work really hard on your programming, but if you don't meet the right people, or if you never make any kind of connections, you'll kind of get limited and you won't be able to go and work at other companies that might be interesting, right? Like usually the application process is really hard. Especially if you apply it through a website. I don't think like people really read your resume. I think people just sort of like, well, I know how it works because I programmed those before, and it just tends to go to an email server and get lost in a whole bunch of junk mail. So I don't advise that. I actually advise networking and just talking to people and being, you know, pretty passionate about whatever it is your project is. So if you're a React person or a Vue person, and you're just really dialed into that, that's going to take you further than, you know, just saying, hire me, hire me, hire me. I don't know. All right, it's almost 7:15. I'll give one more minute to talk for People Network, and then after that, we'll just go to Rob.
Jason, I noticed you unmuted. Do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Jason, and then actually I'm in another meeting, but I think this one sounds interesting, so I'd like to join because I'm doing programming for a long time, and then right now I kind of shift my focus on JavaScript and React because I'm interested in the blockchain development, and a lot of things I find out it's quite important to use JavaScript. So that's why I'm here.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great to hear. Okay. I'm going to hand it to you, Rob. Do you want to just allow like a few more people, or you can go ahead and start if you're ready?
There's the mute button.
Yeah, you're muted.
Sure, let's jump in.
Okay. All right. Handing it off to you then. You also have hosting ability, so you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. Let me grab that and yank that over there. Okay. So Vue and TypeScript working together like peanut butter and jelly. Oh, that's interesting that that was there. Here's the part where I tell you I'm definitely going to post my slides on my site tonight. You're going to look tonight, tomorrow, next week, next month. In about 3 months, you're going to get tired of waiting for me to post my slides. You're going to email me and you're going to say, hey, can you post your slides on your site? And I'll reply in 6 months and say, yeah, I'll definitely post them on my site tonight. And I'll never post them at all. I've been in enough talks with that routine that I actually go a very different direction. The slides are online right now. You can go to robrich.org. And when you go to robrich.org, click here up at the top at presentations. And here's Vue.js and TypeScript working together like peanut butter and jelly. Here's the slides that we're going to look at right now. Here's the code that we'll look at right now. It is all online right now already, which is really cool. So achievement unlocked. We now have the code. While you're here on my site, click on About Me, and you'll see some of the things that I've done recently. I am a Microsoft MVP. Oh, there we go. Zoomed in a smidge. I'm a Microsoft MVP, a friend of Redgate. AZ GiveCamp is really cool. AZ GiveCamp brings volunteer developers together with charities who otherwise couldn't afford software services. We start building software for them Friday after work. Sunday afternoon, we deliver that completed software back to the charities and go back to work on Monday. Sleep is optional, caffeine provided. If you're in Phoenix, come join us for the next AZ Give Camp. Or if you'd like a Give Camp in your area, hit me up on Twitter or by email, and let's get philanthropy installed in your area too. Some of the other things that I've done, SQL Source Control Basics, mine is chapter 8. That was a lot of fun. I worked on Gulp as a core contributor in version 2 and version 3. And so that's kind of where I cut my teeth in JavaScript. One of the things I'm particularly proud of, I replied to a .NET Rocks podcast episode. They read my comment on the air. They sent me a mug. Woohoo! So there's my claim to fame. So let's dig into Vue and TypeScript because that's why we're here. We talked about this guy. Now this isn't meant to be a tutorial on either Vue or TypeScript, though we will talk about them a little bit, but rather how do they work together and what are the benefits of each and should I go deeper? So if you're familiar with Vue, we're going to go real fast, but if you aren't familiar with Vue, here's kind of the methodology involved in how to get started with it. Vue is a SPA framework, not that unlike Angular and React. And Vue really focuses on developer productivity, keeping the concept count low so that you can focus on your tasks at hand. So React, Angular, and Vue, there really isn't a wrong choice here. All of them support web components. All of them have Shadow DOM or Virtual DOM. All of them use these same methodologies to be really efficient and really effective in the way that they build their SPAs. All of them are based on Webpack and Babel. Some of them may have TypeScript rather than Babel, but some of them include Babel as well as TypeScript, which is pretty cool. We'll see that today. So ultimately, whichever one you choose, there's no wrong choice here. Find the one that makes you happy and dial that in and have a lot of fun with it. So where they differ is kind of their approach to the things. They're not competing as much as they're learning from each other, and each one is kind of growing in really elegant ways. Angular is based in TypeScript, and so to get started with Angular, you have to get TypeScript, you have to get ES6. React has JSX, which has both HTML and JavaScript kind of intermingled together in a really elegant way. And Vue has single file components, where you have the HTML and the JavaScript and the CSS in one file all together. Now, it's unlike React's JSX. They're not intermingled. You know, HTML is still best as HTML, but that single file component brings all three of those pieces together in a really elegant way. So my totally biased opinion, React is built for tooling. It has the TypeScript so that it can make autocompletes work better. React is built for Facebook for very high-end problems that need that kind of, you know, really big horsepower. It's also very functional in nature. So, you know, there's a lot of big head stuff going on. And Vue is really built for developers. Low concept count, really easy on-ramp. It's really geared towards supporting the developer experience, towards supporting developer joy. So if you go to robrich.org and grab these slides, all of these blue text are links. You can click on each of them and get some more details. So this one will actually get to a more detailed comparison that is really cool. So Vue. Let's get started with Vue. I just created this empty folder here. And it's completely empty. Vue create my app. Apparently my phone wants to join the conversation. Okay, so what's cool here is that Vue will start to interview us and understand the needs that we have in our system and be able to, from there, tune our application. So I'm not going to take the defaults. I'm going to manually select my features. I want Babel. I want TypeScript. I want this to be a progressive web app. So now I have offline support. I'd like to use a router so that I can navigate between pages in my app. I want a Flux store. I might want to use SCSS. I'd like to include Jest or Mocha unit testing. I can include Cypress or Nightwatch tests. And so ultimately, I can kind of pick the features that I want and really dial in that kind of experience. I'm going to hit go. It says, would you like to use class style components? Class style components was an interesting experiment in Vue 2. They've moved away from that towards more React-like, React hooks-based components. And so I'll say no there. Do I want to use Babel alongside TypeScript? Yes, I would. Would I like to use history mode for the router? Yes, I would. What kind of linting do I want? I'll take ESLint defaults, and I'll lint on save, and also lint and fix on commit. I'll put my config files in dedicated files, and would I want to save this so that, you know, then it would be just a quick preset? I'm going to say no in this case, but if you do the same choices a lot, then you might want to choose yes. And ultimately, then it's going to kick off, and it's going to run the npm install and ultimately scaffold out all of the files in the directory. So I've got this directory right here that is already done just because npm install takes a little bit. Let's pop that open. And here's the thing. This code is already up on GitHub, so I'll put that link in the chat. This code was made with exactly that type of experience. And then each of the folders is one of the steps in our journey today, where we'll get to see various ways that TypeScript and Vue interact in elegant ways. So straight away, we see that our app is based in TypeScript. We have this tsconfig.json that shows us how we compile from TypeScript to JavaScript. We see we have a main.ts that kind of bootstraps our app. We have an app.vue. Here's where we see the single file components in a really elegant way. Here's that single file component where we have a template and then, you know, the HTML inside this template section. We now have a style section that outlines some CSS content. And in this case, we didn't need any TypeScript, so that piece is empty. But if we were to pop open a component, say, hello world, nope, hello world doesn't have any. Yeah, there we go. If we pop open the hello world component, we see that here's the HTML doing what HTML does best. Here's the CSS in the spot where CSS works best. And here's the JavaScript in this script tag. Now, ultimately, as it gets rendered to the page, each of them will get split into different pieces. CSS will end up in CSS bundles. JavaScript will end up in JavaScript bundles. And so ultimately, we just have all three of those pieces in really elegant places that do what they need to do. Those are those single file components. Any questions so far on Vue? We'll definitely dig in a whole lot farther.
And if you have questions, you can also use the chat, just so you know.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I never used Vue before. So the single file sounds good for me, but my question would be, of course, you have some common CSS you want to set up for all of your files. So how Vue handle this kind of situation?
Good question. So here in our app, we have the regular content. And then we have public content that may include common things. Now this is that index.html that gets loaded. That will then bootstrap all the content. So we will have our JavaScript files that are included right here. Sometimes when I have a script that I need to include in all pages, I'll add this, link href rel equals style sheet, href equals /css /style.css, and that will include it in all the pages. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it, which is really interesting, is here in my app.vue or in my main.ts, I can say import some file.css, and it will actually pull in that CSS file and include it in the bundles that it uses in the normal way. So either way works, and that's how I'll pull in, you know, the CSS that works for all things. In this case, the way that they chose to do it was they just have it in the app component. So these are kind of the global things. And that's another approach as well. That was a great question. Thank you. So we looked at Vue for a minute. Now let's look at TypeScript for a minute. TypeScript. So TypeScript elegantly solves the problem of, did I call it correctly? Here's a line in our JavaScript source code somewhere. It calls some critical function, and I pass in customer and invoice and date, and I pass in true, but I pass it inside these curly braces. I'm not sure what I'm flagging yet. I pass in false. Wait, is that a typo that I have 2 commas? Or is that on purpose? This is the problem that TypeScript is meant to solve, is it helps us understand when we call functions or when we define things, is that the intent that I had when I built it? So typically to solve this problem, we'll start to do something like this. So I'm going to build up an object and I'm going to pass in all the things. Now, the beauty of building up an object like this is then I take in a single args parameter into my function, or I can destructure it straight away using similar syntax. And then I know that I have all of the parameters and they're named just so. That's one way we've used in JavaScript to try and get around this problem. We don't have many arguments anymore. We only have one, and we very specifically name them. We're kind of, creating, I don't know, types. So this is my other great example of when this can go awry. In jQuery, and I realize we're really dusting off the catacombs here. Do I do a .ajax on the $, or do I pick something first? What do I pass into it? Do I pass in a URL first, or do I pass in that URL as part of the object? And when I'm doing a getter or a setter, is this a setter or is this a getter if I happen to accidentally pass in undefined? All of those types of things are the things that TypeScript will help us with. It'll validate, have we called our thing correctly? Have we defined our object correctly? These are the things that's really good. JavaScript is good at catching typos. So JavaScript or TypeScript, unlike CoffeeScript, is a complete superset of JavaScript. So any valid JavaScript is valid TypeScript. What it adds is then optional type hints for design time. Now, as it does the TypeScript compilation, or maybe transpilation, that removes all of the type hints. So what actually runs in your browser is JavaScript. As you pop open the Vue source in JavaScript, if you put in the Chrome developer tools, what you're debugging is JavaScript. Now, it does create a source map. So if you have your TypeScript source available, you can pretend debug your TypeScript, debug the code that you wrote, but what's actually running in the browser is JavaScript. What's nicely though, is it does that compilation process, removing all those type hints. And then because it's just JavaScript running in the browser, all the things that JavaScript does still work just fine. So if I haven't made TypeScript exactly happy, that's okay. What's really cool, TypeScript is free and open source. You can just install it from NPM, just npm install -g TypeScript, and now you have TypeScript. So kind of like Babel, we can use new features of JavaScript sooner. Babel was created so that we could transpile newer versions of JavaScript into older versions of JavaScript. And TypeScript does the same thing. So some of these really cool things, the nullish coalescing operator, I love this one because it's like, it's no longer just truthy and falsy, rather it's null or undefined. And so if you have a false value, you'll not get the default overriding it. Optional chaining, that's a really, really cool feature of JavaScript that actually came to TypeScript first. Private fields were actually in TypeScript long before they were in JavaScript as well. So, you can use TypeScript to get at these modern features and start to leverage them faster. knowing that you'll do that transpilation step that'll get it back into normal JavaScript so that you can run it in regular browsers. On the other hand, evergreen browsers have gotten a lot better. So if you can assume evergreen, you may just be able to use these features straight away. So TypeScript validates that the types match. TypeScript does not validate that your business logic does what you expect it to do. If you're using TypeScript instead of testing, then TypeScript is probably not a good choice. So how do we get started with TypeScript? Well, because all JavaScript is valid TypeScript, step one is just to rename the file from JS to TS. We create a TS config file somewhere, and we rig up the TypeScript build to kick off. If you're using the Create React app, or you're using the Angular CLI, or using the Vue CLI to instantiate your project, all of this is done for you. You already have the TypeScript build set up, you have the TS config in place, and so you're ready to go. So I start off renaming it from .js to .ts, and then I can add these optional hints, and they are completely optional. This says that I expect that this thing coming in is a string, or a Boolean, or a number, or an object of this shape. I can define that type to kind of say, this is what I expect to come into this function. Similarly, I can define the result. I expect the result of this function to be a string. These are type hints, so now when I call it, if I pass in a number, it will give me a compile warning and help me understand that maybe I didn't call that function correctly. So I just renamed the .js to TS. And then where it makes sense, I don't need to do this all at once. I can come annotate my code with the types that make sense for this function. Here's another example. So I've already renamed it from app.js to app.ts, and I created this constant. Const x has a that's equal to b and c that's equal to d. Did I define that constant correctly? I don't know. So I'm going to create a types.ts that will declare an interface. I've defined this as customer info. So already we have more information. This is, a customer. A is a string, C is a number, and O optionally is a string. So if there is no O in this object, that still is a valid object, but you may optionally have an O that is of type string. That's pretty cool. So now I'm going to import that from types. I'm going to import customer info, and I'm going to declare this similarly, colon, and define that type to say that I think X is a customer info. It should have this shape. Now, this isn't constraining it at runtime. It's not like if it doesn't have, or if it has extra properties, I'm going to drop them automatically. If I don't have enough properties, suddenly I'll get a runtime error. None of that happens. It's all design time hints. But now I'm going to get red squiggles right here. And I'm going to get red squiggles right here because C is defined as a number, and I created it as a string. Now that's really cool. I get those red squiggles. I know that I've defined it incorrectly just as I was typing, and it's a really elegant way then for me to catch that mistake as quickly as I possibly can. Any questions so far on TypeScript?
Yeah, I have a question. It seems to me like the type validation stuff has it's useful for catching bugs or whatever, but is there a security component to it? Is there maybe a good reason to do TypeScript types because it can keep your program safer somehow?
There actually isn't a security component to it, but I like that thought. All of these are design time hints, so it's just validating that you've called it correctly. At build time, all of these types get stripped out. So in your production runtime code, this is gone. I don't have that extra dependency. My code will, at runtime, just look like this.
Thank you.
That was a great question. Thanks.
I'd like to add to that, a type error could be a vulnerability that a hacker could exploit.
Right. You can do bad things with type vulnerabilities, but TypeScript doesn't really help you with that, because you could equally consume the JavaScript build output from this and do whatever wonderful, nasty JavaScripty things you do. So TypeScript. TypeScript can figure out the types itself in many cases, but I would recommend that annotate the types whenever you possibly can. Even if it feels a little bit verbose, what you're identifying is your intent. And a lot of time that we spend coding is reading code. So the more that we can make our intent clearer, the more we can read the code faster. So be nice to the future developer who's maintaining your code, which may be you shortly after you've forgotten how it works. You're expressing your intent, and that is a really, really helpful piece. So we've got Vue, this really elegant developer-focused on-ramp system. We've got TypeScript that helps us catch our typos really quickly, helps us identify corner cases. Let's put them together. So we got this Vue app, and it's ready to go. Let's start it up. Npm Run Serve. It's going to take a little bit to dig into pulling all the things. Got to kick up the hamsters. There we go. So it's digging into each of the pieces of my application, finding its dependencies, and doing that TypeScript build to kick things off. Okay, we're ready to go. We can go to localhost 8080. And here's our app. We're using the Vue router so we can navigate between pages without refreshing the page. We see the URL changes up here as we do that. Here's the home page, and the home page is actually relatively blank. This is the Hello World component inside that page. So here's that home page, and it's pretty empty. We just have the Vue logo at the top that we're actually compiling into place, which is really sweet. And this Hello World component, and that Hello World component is the one that actually has all of these links in it. Now this is TypeScript. So instead of it being a .ts file, we just have this lang equals ts to say, hey, this is TypeScript. That's pretty sweet. Now I'm going to do a little bit of linting here. I'm going to pull in an ESLint file and flip over to step 1. Oh, actually, I wanted to do this. Npm Run Lint. And Npm Run Lint will just go through and validate that all of the things do what they need to. If I want to, I can say -- fix, and it will, like Prettier, automatically fix up all the places where I may have left dangling commas or missed semicolons. So next up, I want to add material design. And so I'm going to head off to Beautify. Beautify is this really elegant library that allows me to do material design content. So Vue add Beautify, that's how I pull in this library. Let's do it. So I would do Vue add Beautify, and that would pull in the Beautify plugin. And so I've already done that, actually. Let me go to step 2. And I get ready to go. Npm Run Serve. Now, Beautify wasn't built with TypeScript in mind. So it's JavaScript, but it doesn't have the type hints. As I start digging into this, here's main.ts. And ugh, we have our first thing. It has no idea what Beautify is. It doesn't know if Beautify matches the needs of Vue to kind of get that into place. Should we punt and give up on TypeScript and just go back to regular JavaScript? We could, but a quick Google of how to rig up Beautify with TypeScript gives us our first hint of how to solve this. So we go into tsconfig and we give it a path to the types in Beautify. So let's do that. Here's our compile error. I don't know what Beautify is. Let's add that fix. And so what we did here was we created, not inside tslint, inside tsconfig, we told it, here's where your types are. The majority of them are inside the @types node modules folder, but we also have these Beautify types that, you know, they kind of play in there. We also grab the Beautify types here. Those are the two mods. And now if we go Npm Run Serve, then everything works out just fine. Phew. So we've got our Beautify types. Once this finishes building, now it's pulling in a whole lot more packages because Beautify has lots of pieces. There we go. Now with Beautify in place, I'm going to refresh the page. And now we have a bunch of Beautify stuff. We have this header. We replaced our home page with interesting things. Our about page is still green, but the rest of it is blue. That's perfect. So let's build out our first component. I'm going to pull in 04. Now this is our first custom built component here inside Vue with TypeScript. So similar thing, we're just going to create a template and we'll reference vcard. So, you know, we're pulling in those Beautify things. I've got a counter. Here in the text, I have these two angle brackets, the handlebars that allow me to quickly bind a value into place. I have these buttons. I've bound them with @click, meaning this is an event. So when the click button is pressed, I'm going to call this add function and this subtract function. Jumping down into our TypeScript code here, we're going to export default. And here's the internal data to our component. It's going to keep track of this count. When add is pressed, we're going to increment count. When subtract is pressed, we'll decrement count. And then we'll emit this event for other things that want to consume it. So I'm going to go to the playground page and I'll increment my counter. And we can see that we've got that counter incrementing. And we're broadcasting this event to other components. So here's my playground page that references this counter component. And I'm binding this much like any other event. I'm just saying, hey, when the count changed, call my count changed event in this component. So here's my count changed event, and I'm setting this .count to this .count. I made a typo here. The counter is broadcasting a number. This is of type number. I know it's a number. TypeScript knows it's a number. Here in this event, I'm listening to it, but I told it in my type hint right here, I expect this to have an object with a count property, and I expect that count property to be a string. I invented this count property. I called it a string. TypeScript doesn't validate that interface between components. So in this case, it didn't help me catch this bug. That's a bummer. But as it transpiled it into JavaScript, we see that in JavaScript types being types, it works just fine. This number out here is getting populated based on the number inside of our component, and everything just works just fine. No console warnings, no anything else. It just works. The running JavaScript will always work the way we expect the running JavaScript to work. Okay, so let's build up a few more components. Let's build up I don't know. Oh, let's copy them into the demo folder. I love this part where the build just goes, hey, I noticed some stuff. We've got some more components. I've got icon playground that digs into font awesome things, a navigator playground. The font awesome, the icon playground is really cool. Here's V icon, and I'm just specifying the font awesome details. Navigator playground, I'm playing with Vue routers integration with Beautify. So I just say V button and 2, that's a path in my router.js or router.ts file. I can also have this programmatic navigation. So I'm going to call this navigate button, and it's going to go out. You notice that TypeScript is completely fine with that. It understands what $router is. It understands how the TypeScript or how the Beautify things work. And so now here in my page, here's my font awesome. All of my fonts are rendering correctly. I can link off to the home page either programmatically or directly, and all of those pieces work. This TypeScript and Vue thing is working out pretty well. Any questions so far?
Awesome presentation so far. I'm just going to say that. I have no other stuff to say other than super cool right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, then let's dig in a little bit further. This is a Vue form. And, you know, we have this material design thing. The name moves out of the way, the email. We pick an item. We can't submit the form until all the things are filled out correctly. And now we can submit the form, which is pretty sweet. I love this because in the Beautify docs, I just say Vue source, and it says, here's all the stuff with the thing that you need to do it. Here's the script where it's talking about all the validation details. Here's the template where it's defining all of the things. So we can just go grab this form and set it in place in a new component. So let's go create a new component. Let's call this, let's go call this a form, something really novel. And here's all of that content, and it works great, except for we get to this part, and TypeScript doesn't know what this validate function is, or this reset function, or this reset validation function. Now, if we do a build, we get those errors where TypeScript says, I don't know. What's interesting is it still built the site. If I come into my playground, here's my form, I can still interact with it. It didn't block my ability to do what I needed to do. It's still built, but it gave me this error saying, I don't know what validate is. So I'm still developing, I'm still productive, but let's see if we can help it. Here's our next strategy for how to handle TypeScript. So right now, form is of type Vue or Vue or element array. But I know that form is actually an HTML form. And in particular, it's not just an HTML form, but rather it's a Beautify form. And the Beautify form has these additional methods. So let's come in here and let's create a new type. I'm going to create a new folder. Let's call this types. And I'm going to create a new file, and I'll call this type.ts, types.ts. And I think I may have actually set it outside the folder, but I'm going to say export type v form. I just made that up. And I'm going to say it's a Vue component, Vue element, and it's also an HTML form element. And it's also a thing that has these additional methods. So I know that it has a validate, export function validate that takes in a bool and not a bool. Let me do this slightly different. Validate is a function that takes in nothing and returns a Boolean. And no, that's not right. Validate takes in, oh, it does return a valid. Reset will take in nothing and return nothing. And the third method is reset validation, and that also takes in nothing and returns nothing. Well, now how do we reference form element? It can't find that. Okay, so let's import element for our HTML form element from, I think it comes in from Beautify. Nope, from Vue. Nope, I'm not sure where that is. Let's go pull this into place. And actually, let's assume that that worked. And we'll come in here. So now I'm going to say, I would like to import this V form from /types/types. Now I have this V form thing. I can create a computed property here. And this computed property is, well, let's call it form. And we're going to say return this $refs.form as vform. I know that this thing thinks it's an element or a view thing, but I'm going to say, no, it's actually a vform. I've just created another property. So now instead of saying this.refs.form, I can just say this.form. And this.form knows how to validate. It knows how to reset. It knows how to do all the things. Now this is a little bit of a brute force mechanism for doing it, because I just kind of said, hey, TypeScript, I got this. I know that that isn't the thing, but I'm going to force it into place. Now, I'm only forcing it into place at design time. At production, at runtime, it's still JavaScript. It's still going to take whatever's there. And if the method doesn't actually exist on the thing, then I'm still going to get a runtime error. But now my TypeScript is happy and everything will build correctly. Let's go pull that into place. And I did leave it outside the folder, my bad. It's component. So I pull in component from Vue, HTML form element, and component, and now all the things work. And here in my form, I'm creating that computed property, and I'm using it in all the places. TypeScript is now happy. It just rebuilt right here. Let's double check it and say rebuild. Yep. So, oh, I'm missing a semicolon. There we go. It rebuilt. I've got no type errors. Everything's happy. And now my form will work, will still work as expected, but now I also have TypeScript help with it. I'm going to pick a thing. I agree. Oh, that's not an email. Now it's valid. So now I can submit it. So that was our next strategy. We create a type and we can brute force cast it into that type. So this counter component is interesting, but I notice here in this counter component that we always start with 0. That's kind of boring. I want to start with, I don't know, whatever I want to start with. Let's say import random from Lodash. And I've also gone to npm install Lodash. But now it's like, hey, I don't know what this random thing is. I don't know what this Lodash is. Lodash as well is a JavaScript library that was built not having anything to do with TypeScript. The types just don't exist. It was a JavaScript library and I just want to use it. So here I want to say random. I'll give it a min of 0 and a max of 100. And I want to do all the things. Ooh, I think I cheated. Let me actually do this. npm uninstall types Lodash. That'll learn me to reset my demo. Okay, so now it has no idea what this Lodash thing is. And so I'm going to create, like we did here for types, I'm going to create another file in types, but I'm going to call this, is that inside this folder? Yes. New file, lodash.d.ts. Now .d.ts means this is a TypeScript declaration file. I don't need to reference this. I don't need to pull it in. I don't need to import it. I just then define my types. So I'm going to say declare module Lodash. And that module Lodash just happens to be the same Lodash. Here's that counter component. It just happens to be the same name as this one. Declare module Lodash. I'm going to relaunch VS Code just in case, because VS Code sometimes doesn't catch up with new type declaration files right away. Ooh, not that file, or not that folder, this folder, the one that we keep dumping things into. And nope, I got that wrong again. It is this folder. Okay, so we have our lodash.d.ts. We've said that this module is a thing. Because it's now a thing, then this is no longer red squigglies, but now it still doesn't know what random is. Again, Lodash was built before TypeScript was a thing, and so we don't know what that is. So let's define what random is. We can say export function random. It takes in a min, which is a number, and a max, which is also a number, and it yields a number. That's what the random function does. Now, because I have this random function, we see that the red squiggles go away here, and now we get type validation here. If I were to pass in, I don't know, ABC, I now get the red squiggles. That is not a number. It is a string. I swap this back. Oh, what if I only pass in one thing? Well, this expects 2 arguments. I get a similar red squiggle. Now we know what this is. That's pretty cool. Let's kick this off. Npm Run Serve. Now we don't have any TypeScript warnings. Our random function works as expected. And once we run through the build, let's fire up our page and see if that random component works as expected. Go, 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 go. I actually really love that in TypeScript, I think it was 2.7, maybe it was 3.7. They sped it up a lot. So yeah, there is a whole lot going on in this application, especially because Beautify was really not built very well. But now we've got this.
So I have a question, just real quick.
Yeah.
Is there a reason you use npm over yarn with Vue?
Good question. Is there a reason that I use npm over yarn? I started with Node in Node 0.4. We're now on Node 14. And there was no yarn back then. So the muscle memory, the watching my fingers do the work, my fingers just type in npm instinctively. I grant that yarn is likely faster in many cases, but yeah, my fingers still just type npm.
All right, no worries. I was just curious. Sometimes like when I'm doing the builds, I feel like Yarn is a lot better because it like does everything quickly. But
yeah,
no
what
problem.
I particularly enjoy is that Yarn really put pressure on the npm team to go faster. And so npm got much, much better once Yarn was around.
That's true. All right, we'll let you back.
Okay, so I refresh my page. It starts out with a new counter. That's perfect. I've got this random function working as expected. But building this module, that was kind of a lot of work. All else being equal, there's a lot of Lodash functions. I really don't want to write this 1,000 times, once for each thing. And how many libraries am I going to consume? Am I going to have to do all of this work to build these type declaration files all myself? Well, that's what's really cool. Here is definitely typed. And if I just go to github.com/definitely typed, I will be able to see all of the JavaScript libraries that have type declarations built for me. The community really came together and did some awesome work. I've been scrolling for a while and I'm still in the A's. Each of these type declarations in this file are built into type declaration NPM packages. So any NPM package, if you put it in the types/organization, that is the type declarations for this library, whether the author built it or not. So I just search for type/my library. Let's look for Lodash. And I land on this page that is the types for Lodash. So if I want to use Lodash with TypeScript, I can also npm install --save-dev, because it's only a dev dependency. It's stripped out in production at types/Lodash. And now I'll get that type declaration file automatically pulled in. So at that point, I don't need to build this lodash.d.ts. And so, yeah, I could probably delete this file and just use the official ones, and that would be great. There's that next strategy. We can build a type declaration file, or we can look for definitely typed for type declaration files that, that have been built for us. So that I just live coded that entire stuff. That was cool. So let's actually do the next step. Oh, there's that type declaration file. 10. So this app is looking pretty awesome. And I'm really enjoying all of these pieces. I like the counter component. I like that I can pull in font awesome. I like these material design forms. That's pretty sweet. I'm going to head off to Vue awesome. And I'm going to look for new stuff. Now, there are a lot of awesome type things. If you search for your thing awesome, you'll probably land on a GitHub repo that is not that unlike this. This is specifically Vue awesome. And so there's a lot of very well curated pieces that are pretty cool. Now, what's really sweet, what's really, awesome, this is the index. We haven't even gotten into the stuff yet. Here's where the stuff begins. So here in this index, I was like, well, I kind of want to do a parallax thing. Here's the Parallax Library. So I'm going to head off to the Parallax section and I don't know, let me pick one. I'll pick a Vue Parallax.js. Vue Parallax.js. This was definitely not built with TypeScript in mind, but I want to use this library. I think this library is pretty cool. So I'll do this, import Vue from Vue, import Vue Parallax from Vue Parallax. Hey, wait a minute. We had this problem with Beautify. Are we going to have this problem again? Yep. We have no idea what Vue Parallax is. Here in our main.ts, we have this Vue Parallax, and Vue Parallax is, I don't know, whatever type it is. Let's pull up the TypeScript here, or the JavaScript here inside Vue Parallax JS and try and get a feel for what's going on. Well, we have this prototype, and there's this add function that kind of feels like it might be doing something interesting. It takes in an element and a binding, and it does some stuff. And oh, export default. That's probably more important. Vue prototype Parallax JS, Vue directive. Ooh, that's probably as I add this into the thing. So how am I going to generate a type definition for this? I don't know. Let's look at our next strategy. So here inside node modules, let me actually get to it another way. I'm going to pop open a new terminal, and I'll go to that directory inside my node modules inside Vue Parallax JS. I'll get into the lib directory. And here's that Vue Parallax JS that we were looking at before. That's the actual file. Now I'm going to copy this to .TypeScript. All JavaScript is valid TypeScript, so this is a completely valid TypeScript file. And now I'm going to use the TypeScript compiler, TSC, but instead of compiling this TypeScript into JavaScript, I'm going to say, build me a declaration file. Declaration Vue Parallax JS.ts. And it's going to go through, look at that JavaScript file, start to intuit all the things. It's going to error in very glorious ways. That is so cool. But if I then come into this folder and come look at that file, here is that type declaration file. And that got me started. It says, hey, Parallax JS has an install method. It takes in an any and it returns a void. Well, I know that this any is actually a Vue. I think it's actually a Vue constructor. And so this .d.ts file isn't perfect, but it definitely got me started. I can take that together with comparing the other type definition files that create Vue plugins, and I can start to build up a type declaration file. That's not it. Type declaration file that will get me where I need to go. So I'm going to actually delete these two files so that Vue doesn't get confused. But let's then pull in the type declaration file that I built. So here's Vue parallax.d.ts, and I don't need to reference it. I don't need to import it. But this is kind of what that Vue Parallax starts to be. So we'll let Vue rebuild. I really did something bad in that file. And now, if we go into main.ts, now it knows what Vue Parallax is, and Vue Parallax can be used in all the normal ways. And I come back to my app. Oh, module not found, can't resolve Vue Parallax JS. I really broke something. Let me try it again. Did I move it out of, did I delete the, oh, I didn't delete the TypeScript file. I deleted the JavaScript file. I think that's why it's grumpy. Let me try again. Nope, module not found, can't resolve Vue Parallax. Let me try it this way then. Module not found. Ooh.
I guess like,
Really?
yeah, sometimes like I run into these kind of issues too. Like when, you know, I want to use, I know you use Lodash. And so if you don't import like the ES6 version of Lodash, it won't actually work with your React or ES6 code. So
right.
You have to like make sure to do that. Sometimes I kind of find like it's actually annoying on the NPM documentation because they don't say that. And kind of with the same thing here. I know that, you know, the Vue team could probably, or like the people who are using Vue could easily like compile all this into TypeScript, but I don't know like if it's worth it as a developer to just do it instead on their behalf. I don't know.
Yeah. Wow, that NPM. Oh, sometimes VS Code blocks NPM installs based on the plugins that I have installed. So let's see if that gets us unblocked. Go, go, go. Here's the part where it's like, yeah, you definitely should use, oh, this one. It can't delete a .delete file. That is hilarious. Okay, so let's see if it will work. And if not, then yeah, Vue Parallax JS is actually a very poor library that I found just to prove the point. And so if this doesn't render, then that's totally okay. Ooh, no type errors, no lint errors with one error. That's interesting. Can't resolve. Okay, so it's really grumpy. Never mind, we'll move on. The cool part though is all of the code that we just explored is here in this repository. So you can open up each step. You can npm install or yarn install and run the code at that step. What I did was I just copied the code from each step into a new demo folder just so I could overwrite it at every step. But you've got the code available for you to do all the things that we did. So kind of looking through the list, here are the strategies that we used to include JavaScript in TypeScript. And so this isn't the order that we went through them, but this is kind of the order that you might want to choose as you dig into building TypeScript libraries. And these same methodologies could work whether you're doing a TypeScript Express app or a TypeScript React app, or in this case, a TypeScript Vue app. So first up, use libraries built for TypeScript. If they had TypeScript in mind when they built the library, then it's super easy. Now, this is definitely not the reason that you chose this library. You chose this library because it has the features that you want and it works in your application. So yeah, you're likely going to dismiss this rule straight out of the gate. I did too. Next up, go look indefinitely typed for type / whatever your library is. If you can find types indefinitely typed, then you know that you've got a more or less comprehensive set of types that can work in all of the places. Next up, if you don't find type / your thing, then you can handcraft a type declaration file. Now, we didn't need to reference this. We didn't need to import it. We just create a .d.ts file that includes a module declaration that just happens to exactly match the module declaration that we're importing. Next up, we can generate the declaration file using this. We moved the JavaScript file to a TypeScript file, and we said tsc -- declaration file.ts, and that got us started. It's probably not perfect, but it'll kind of get you past the hump of, you know, what is the module name? What are all the types? Maybe it is perfect. Next up, use any. Any is a type that we actually didn't use in this because any just says, I don't know, it's whatever you want. Oftentimes when you say any, what that tells TypeScript is It's JavaScript, just let it go. There is a linting rule to say don't use any, because it is such a powerful hammer. And so you really do want to try and tie down your types as much as you possibly can. But if you just really can't and you just need it to work, cast it to a type of any, and now you can do whatever you want, and TypeScript will leave you alone. If you just have one line that is a really, really stubborn line, and you just can't get that line to work, you can create this comment // @ts-ignore, and it will just ignore the next line. Whether that's a wacky call into a thing or an import statement or whatever you're doing on that one next line, TypeScript will just ignore it and decide that that's okay. Again, you can create a linting rule to say, don't allow ts-ignore in my anywhere in my code base, because yeah, this is a rule to cheat. So ideally, you're using some of these other methodologies of how to pull JavaScript into TypeScript. Use libraries built in TypeScript, grab types from definitely typed, handcraft type declaration files, or generate your declaration files. We also did an interesting thing where we used as to cast something into place, to just, you know, kind of force it into a particular type. So these are the strategies of how to include Vue and TypeScript together. When would I choose to use Vue and TypeScript together? For large or long-lived code bases. If I'm going to have this code base around for a while, I probably want to build it as well as possible. TypeScript's job is to create those type annotation hints that are able to better convey my intent. And so as a developer, I want to communicate better with my fellow developers, which may be me shortly after I forgot how it worked. So leave yourself breadcrumbs, teach yourself how to use the component when you come back into it by putting these type annotations in all the places that make sense. TypeScript is a good go-to for a first check of syntax. So I've seen some projects where it's completely built in TypeScript, but they just rename all the extensions to .ts just so they can get TypeScript to try and guess things and see if there are some mistakes. Some pretty famous libraries did that, just flipping from JavaScript to TypeScript in their build process, and found some really weird edge case bugs that had been in their libraries for years. When to avoid TypeScript? If you depend on a lot of components, you're probably going to spend a lot of time babysitting these TypeScript types. And so it may make sense if you've got a lot of external libraries that have no concept of TypeScript and no type declaration files, just to move back to JavaScript instead, because then you don't have to babysit the TypeScript system. For quick doodles, where the goal is just to do stuff, especially when I'm just doing it inside of a script tag, then I won't use TypeScript because that's just extra weight. Or in the case of a script tag, I don't have a command line build associated with this project. If you believe that the compile is the only unit test, please don't use TypeScript, because compile will only check that you've typed the things correctly, not that you implemented the logic correctly. It does not validate your business logic. It only validates your syntax. So please continue to build unit tests, and as that suite of unit tests is able to validate your business intent, and then you want to take that extra step to go have a system run behind you and validate that you've typed everything correctly, that's when you pull in TypeScript. Jeff Fritz is one of the maintainers of the Vue project, and he's very opinionated on this. He created the Vue Enterprise boilerplate and very specifically ripped out all of the TypeScript pieces on it, because he really focuses on this. If you believe that compile is your only unit test, then don't use TypeScript. So that was my presentation. I think Vue and TypeScript is a really elegant combination. Vue with its really elegant and simple on-ramp, TypeScript with its ability to find interesting syntax errors in dark corners. I think they make a great combination to do some really elegant things. What are your thoughts and questions?
All right. Go ahead if anybody has a question at this point. Otherwise, round of applause for Rob.
That was great. Thanks, Rob. That was awesome. Thank you.
Sure. If you find questions tomorrow or next week, hit me up on Twitter at rob_rich, or send me an email. You can click on the email button on robrich.org. You've got the code on robrich.org, linked from robrich.org on GitHub, and you've got these slides on robrich.org right now.
I have a little question or inquiry. So I noticed that a lot of the nice type checking magic that happens automatically when you make a type declaration or something happens inside of VS Code, which was the code editor you were using. So what kind of tips do you have for somebody who uses something more basic like Vim?
There is Vim bindings inside VS Code. I know that's not the answer that you're looking for. Or we saw those same syntax errors here on the command line. And so as you're in Vim typing away, you won't get the red squiggles. But if you have npm watch running to run all of your unit tests, and it'll do a build on the way through, then you can periodically glance off at that console and catch those build errors that way. Similar in Atom or Sublime, it's like, well, they don't have TypeScript details built in. Where do I go from here? And yeah, the experience is best in VS Code, sorry.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess, well, maybe this is more of a comment than anything else. I think it was pretty cool to see, having come from like a React and Angular background, I think it's cool to see like a lot of the similarities and stuff. So that was pretty cool. I was kind of interested in it was one of the config JSON files that sort of behaved as, at least in my interpretation, kind of like app module. Like, I guess, like, are there like similarities between like those frameworks, or?
Yeah, definitely. Let me pop that code back open. Open with code. The Angular's app module is really similar to Vue's main.ts. And React kind of has a similar main.ts. I think they might call it index.ts. That is kind of that thing that bootstraps the everything. So here's where we say new Vue, and we specify any store or other components. In React, we would do it something like React.render, and then we say app, but then we're going to put it inside of a store provider equals thing. And then let me close the store. Vue has exactly the same experience where, here's that function where it says render. Go kick off my app component and mount it into this app ID on the page. And then this, kind of pulling in all the pieces, that looks a whole lot like Angular. Here inside my app, inside my home page, this is a lot like Angular as well, where I list out the components that I'm going to use on the page so that the tree shaker knows what to get rid of. If I'm referencing hello world, or if I imported it but I didn't reference it, then it can be tree shaken out and the bundle size will be smaller.
Cool. And no ceremony, no, what is it? The decorators or anything.
You can do decorators. You can say component and list your components, not like that. Component, and list out your components like this instead of inside the thing here. I think it makes more sense to do it inside here.
It seems like less work. Maybe that's one of the reasons why it's more developer friendly.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. But what's really cool is React and Angular and Vue all learn from each other. So like Shadow DOM is a thing in all of them because React invented it.
All right. Any other questions? All right. You know, if there are no other questions at this time, then just want to thank you all for coming. You know, and I'll go ahead and just kind of, actually, I'll turn on my video again too. Yeah. So again, thank you for doing this presentation, Rob. It was actually really, really good. I actually felt like you know, you did a really great job of explaining Vue, especially even for people kind of new to the language. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of end with, you know, if anybody has any questions again about like how to find the video for this particular talk, all you have to do is just basically go over to our website, and I will share that again one more time for the people who are kind of late. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. So this is our website, JavaScriptLA, and you can get there by just going to javascriptla.net. And then we also have an Instagram, and so it's at instagram.com/javascriptninja. Don't worry so much about the URLs, because you can get to pretty much everything from our website in general. We always post new videos here. We also post blogs. There's Rob. So right after this meetup, I'm going to go ahead and start uploading this video to YouTube. It'll be on our youtube.com/JavaScriptLA channel. And all of the meetup videos are here. In addition to that, sometimes I'll put videos myself out, and you know, I'm looking forward to all your feedback. You know, somebody asked about Yarn. I have a video on Yarn, which you can check out. I did this a couple months ago, and basically, like, it's a quick, I think it's like under 10 minutes. So if you've never used Yarn before, you can check it out. And I kind of explain like what I like about it, at least my take on it. But yeah, you know, this is like your place to go if you want to just, you know, stay in touch with the meetup. And then, you know, you can also chat with us as well. If you felt like you didn't get a time to, you know, talk to anybody today, you can go on Discord or Slack and message people there, and love to hear from you.